Right now, as you're watching this, your body is doing something that most doctors will never tell you about. It's forming cancer. Not metaphorically, not as a risk factor, actually forming microscopic cancer cells, and it has been doing this since you were a child. You've got cancer. I've got cancer. We all do. And the reason most of us never hear a diagnosis isn't luck, it's biology. It's a war being fought inside you every single day. And today we're going to break down exactly how that war works, why some people are losing it earlier than ever before, and what a new generation of science is doing that is so precise, so personal, it sounds like science fiction. I'm Dr. Andersen Cole, and this is Dr. Andersen Cole, where we follow the evidence no matter where it leads. Let's start with something fundamental that almost nobody gets taught. Your body is built from approximately 40 trillion cells. Every single one of those cells has to divide, copy itself, and pass its genetic instructions forward. That's how you exist today versus yesterday. That's how your tissues repair, how your organs function, how you age, copy, replicate, repeat. It never stops. But here's the thing about copying at that scale. It is impossible to do it perfectly. Every single day, your cells make copying errors. Each error is a mutation. And mutations, under the right conditions, are where cancer begins. Now, before you spiral, stay with us, because this is actually good news once you understand the full picture. Most of those mutations are microscopic, silent, and harmless. Think of them like a tiny crack in a wall, small, contained, irrelevant unless something changes the pressure behind it. Your immune system, one of the most underrated forces in your entire body, patrols your tissues constantly. When it finds a mutated cell that shouldn't be there, it eliminates it, fast, quietly, without you ever knowing it happened. That's the normal story of cancer in a healthy human body. It's not a rare event avoided by the lucky few. It's a biological process that your immune system handles thousands of times over a lifetime. So the real question, and this is where it gets uncomfortable, isn't why do people get cancer? The deeper, more urgent question is, why don't we get cancer more often? Think about that. With 40 trillion cells replicating daily, with unavoidable copying errors happening at scale, the math alone should produce far more clinical cancers than we see. Research suggests the answer lives squarely in our immune surveillance system. Your immune cells function like a highly trained rapid response unit, constantly scanning tissue, identifying rogue mutations, and clearing them before they can establish supply lines, recruit resources, or grow into something dangerous. That's what a healthy immune ecosystem does. And for most of human history, it worked well enough to keep clinical cancer a disease of older age. But something has shifted, and we need to talk about it. We are seeing cancers, common cancers and rare cancers, being diagnosed in people who are younger than we have ever tracked before. Not by a little, meaningfully younger. And the research community is asking a question that doesn't yet have a clean answer. Are our immune defenses weakening? Is the surveillance system losing its edge? Here's what we know, and what this suggests. One of the most consistent patterns emerging in the data points to the gut. Specifically, the gut microbiome, the vast, dense ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms living in your digestive tract. This ecosystem does far more than aid digestion. It communicates directly with your immune system. It regulates inflammatory signaling. It trains immune cells on what to attack and what to leave alone. When the gut ecosystem is disrupted through poor diet, antibiotics overuse, chronic stress, ultra-processed foods, immune function downstream gets disrupted too. Inflammation levels rise. the surveillance system becomes less precise. Those microscopic mutations that would normally be cleared start slipping through. Now watch this, because here's where it connects to something most people have never heard explained properly. Inflammation is not just soreness in a joint or redness around a wound. Chronic, low-grade inflammation is essentially background noise that confuses your immune system. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a room full of loud static. The immune cells that should be identifying and clearing precancerous mutations are distracted. They're responding to the inflammatory noise instead of doing precision surveillance work. And if that noise is constant, driven by a diet high in inflammatory foods, disrupted sleep, sedentary behavior, and a damaged gut ecosystem, your biological defenses start to lose the battle they were winning for decades. And then there's something we're only beginning to understand at a population level: microplastics. This isn't a fringe topic anymore. Research is uncovering something alarming. These particles, small enough to pass through tissue barriers, are being found in human blood, in lung tissue, in brain tissue, in virtually every organ system studied. Cars on roads shed aerosolized microplastic particles that we inhale. Food packaged in plastic sheds particles we ingest. Heating food in plastic containers accelerates that process dramatically. These particles are now understood to be pro-inflammatory. They disrupt vascular integrity and appear to settle in tissues in ways that shouldn't be happening. What the full downstream impact on cancer biology is, we are still learning. But the trajectory of the evidence is not reassuring. Here's the honest frame. We don't have all the answers yet on why early onset cancers are rising. What this suggests is a convergence: weakened immune surveillance, a damaged gut ecosystem, rising chronic inflammation, and an environmental toxic burden that our biology didn't evolve to handle. All of those things together shift the balance, and understanding that shift is the first step toward pushing back against it. So what can we do? And more importantly, what is the science actually delivering right now that changes the entire game? Let's talk about immunotherapy. And let's be precise about what it is, because most people have a vague idea but not the actual mechanism. Your immune system already knows how to kill cancer. We established that. The problem is that in clinical cancer, the kind that grows, spreads, and threatens life, the tumor has found ways to hide from immune surveillance. It develops molecular signals that essentially tell immune cells, "Nothing to see here, keep moving." Immunotherapy, at its core, is the science of stripping away those disguises, of waking up your immune system's ability to recognize and target the cancer that it should have been clearing all along. This is not chemotherapy. It's not targeted therapy that goes after one specific mutation. This is boosting the operating system of your immune defense. And what makes it jaw-dropping is the results that research has now documented. In real patients with advanced disease, stage 3 and stage 4 diagnoses, people who by every prior clinical metric were running out of road. And in documented cases, the immune system, once properly activated, has wiped tumors completely. No disease remaining. Years later, still gone. Is this happening for every patient? No. We are honest about that here. This is not a guaranteed outcome. The science is real, the results are real, but we don't yet have the key that unlocks this response for everyone. That research is urgent and ongoing. What is clear is that if you or someone you know is living with a cancer diagnosis and immunotherapy hasn't been discussed, that conversation needs to happen. Ask directly. Research your specific diagnosis alongside the term immunotherapy and clinical trial. Advocate for yourself with the information that now exists. But here's what changes the picture even further. And this is where the gut comes back into the story with urgent force. Research published out of Paris found something that stopped the oncology world in its tracks. Patients on immunotherapy, specifically a class called checkpoint inhibitors, who had a particular bacterium present in their gut, were far more likely to respond positively to treatment. Their own immune system, activated by the therapy, was able to locate and wipe out the cancer effectively. Patients who were missing that bacterium, far less likely to respond. Not slightly less likely, significantly less likely. The bacterium is called Akkermansia muciniphila. Here's why it matters and what it does. Akkermansia is a mucus layer bacterium. It lives in the lining of your gut and helps maintain the integrity of that barrier. When Akkermansia is thriving, it helps regulate immune signaling in a way that keeps surveillance sharp and systemic inflammation lower. When it's depleted, that gut immune communication breaks down. And in the context of immunotherapy, that breakdown can be the difference between response and non-response. That is not a lifestyle tip. That is a life or death biological variable, and you can influence it. How? Through what you eat. Akkermansia is fed by a class of polyphenols called elagitannins. You've probably eaten them without knowing it. They're found in pomegranates, in dried cranberries, and in Concord grapes. These foods, when consumed regularly, help your gut secrete the mucus layer that Akkermansia needs to survive and multiply. You can also take Akkermansia as a supplement, but food and supplementation together create a more robust effect than either alone. The mechanism is clear. Polyphenols feed gut bacteria. Gut bacteria regulate immune signaling. Immune signaling determines whether your body can mount an effective defense. This is educational, not medical advice. We are evidence-led here, and we always manage risk with the guidance of clinical professionals. Now let's go even further, because the most extraordinary development in cancer science right now is something that sounds like it belongs in a film about the future. But it's happening in clinical trials today. Imagine taking a tumor that has just been diagnosed. You send it to a lab alongside a sample of normal blood cells from the same person. In the lab, both are sequenced, the full genetic code of the cancer and the full genetic code of the healthy cells. You then use machine learning to cross-reference those two genetic profiles and identify only the mutations that exist in the cancer, not in the normal tissue, just in the cancer. Those are the targets. Those are the unique fingerprints of that specific tumor in that specific person. Now you select a set of those mutations, 20, 25 of them, pulled from different regions of the tumor, so you're capturing its full biological complexity. Those selected mutations get synthesized into a protein sequence. That protein sequence gets injected under your skin. Your immune system reads it, learns it, builds a targeted response against it. You have just vaccinated yourself against your own cancer, personalized to your exact tumor profile, built from your own biology. This is where immuno-oncology is heading. This is the research being done right now in clinical trial settings that is producing results previously considered impossible. Stage 4 brain cancer patients with NO-detectable disease remaining after treatment. Not remission as we used to define it. Gone. The kind of outcomes that change the entire mental model of what cancer treatment can mean. We don't know yet how to reliably produce this outcome for all cancer types or all patients. That work continues. But the direction of this science is clear, and it points toward a future where the end of cancer as we know it is not a dream. It is a research trajectory. So what does all of this mean for you right now, today, before any of these clinical tools become mainstream? Let's talk about what you can actually do, starting with diet, because the evidence base here is more powerful than most people realize. Eating a diet rich in plant-based foods is not a trend. Every major body of research consistently shows that populations and individuals who eat more plants have better inflammatory profiles, better immune function, better gut ecosystem diversity, and lower cancer incidence across virtually every study design we have. The mechanism is multi-layered. Plants deliver fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. They deliver polyphenols that reduce oxidative stress, and they deliver bioactive compounds that directly interact with immune signaling pathways. Why it matters. Your gut ecosystem is not separate from your cancer biology. They are the same system. Practically, aim for variety across plant categories, not just salad, but berries, legumes, cruciferous vegetables, whole grains, and yes, pomegranate. Does that mean meat is categorically off the table? No. Here's what the evidence actually says, and this is where nuance matters more than tribe. Moderate meat consumption, particularly from higher quality sources, does not appear in the research to be categorically harmful. Meat provides protein, creatine, carnosine, and micronutrients that are genuinely harder to obtain in meaningful quantities from plant sources alone. What the evidence does flag consistently is excess, particularly excess saturated fat and processed meat products. Cutting those down makes biological sense based on their inflammatory and vascular impact. But the honest interpretation of the research is this: sustainability and personalization matter more than dogma. An extreme dietary framework you can't maintain for a decade helps nobody. What works for your metabolism, your lifestyle, your cultural relationship with food, and what you can do consistently is far more valuable than any short-term restriction protocol. Here's a question we want you to think about and drop in the comments below. If you found out tomorrow that a specific food was directly feeding the bacteria that could determine your response to cancer treatment, would you change what's in your kitchen this week? Because that's not hypothetical anymore. That's the science we just walked through. Now, the other side of this equation, beyond what you eat, is understanding how you track what's happening inside you. Biometrics, monitoring your internal signals. And here's something most people don't know about where this actually started. The concept of biologically monitoring human performance in real time didn't begin with wellness influencers or tech entrepreneurs. It began with the space program in the 1960s. Engineers and physicians were trying to figure out how to monitor the health of astronauts inside pressurized suits, in zero gravity, under extreme physiological stress. The entire infrastructure of thinking about real-time biometric feedback was built for that problem. What we now call biohacking is the civilian descendant of that serious scientific enterprise, and there is real value in tracking. Inflammatory markers, metabolic biomarkers, gut health indicators, these give us data points to make better decisions. The caution is in what happens when monitoring becomes obsession. When the number becomes the thing, instead of the behavior change the number is pointing toward. A high-sensitivity CRP reading tells you something is inflamed. That's the signal. What you do with it, the dietary adjustments, the sleep quality improvements, the stress management, that's the response. Don't confuse the instrument panel for the destination. The deep insight here that ties all of this together is something that doesn't get said enough in clinical medicine. Your body has an extraordinary multi-system architecture of self-defense. The immune system, the gut ecosystem, the vascular system, the hormonal network. These are not separate departments. They are one integrated defense grid, constantly communicating, constantly adjusting, constantly working to maintain the conditions under which clinical disease never takes hold. The question, and this is the one that should be driving medical research, dietary science, and your own daily choices, is not just how do we treat disease, it's how do we keep that defense grid functioning at the level it was designed to operate at. Because when it does, cancer remains what it should be, a microscopic process that your biology handles silently, without drama, without diagnosis. We are at an inflection point. Science is giving us tools, from personalized tumor vaccines to gut microbiome interventions to immune checkpoint therapies, that are rewriting what possible means in oncology. The end of cancer as an inevitable death sentence is not wishful thinking. It is a direction. It is happening in labs, in clinical trials, in documented patient outcomes that a decade ago would have been called impossible. But here is what you need to sit with, what we need to sit with together before the next video. The patients most likely to benefit from immunotherapy are the ones whose immune systems still have the capacity to respond. And the gut ecosystem is one of the most powerful determinants of that capacity, which means the food choices happening in your kitchen today are not separate from your cancer biology. They are part of it, right now. If that's the case, and the research out of Paris suggests it clearly is, then there's a second question you need to be asking that almost nobody is asking. And we're going to go deep on that in the next one. If you're not already following this channel, hit subscribe, because what we cover next changes the picture entirely.